Hi, everyone. My name is Matt Haynes. I'm an audiobook narrator,
And I'm Trenton Bennett, and I'm also an audiobook narrator.
and we're here to talk to you authors and rights holders about what some of the parts of the process involve from a narrator's point of view. Trenton, take it away.
You betcha. So, we've talked before about how when an author has a work being made for an audiobook, you have to kind of let go of the performance aspect of it and let the narrator do their thing. And it's probably helpful to know a little bit more perspective about what that would happen in different levels of platform if you're an author who's new to getting into audiobooks and new to working with companies. So, for example, if you are working with a major company like Macmillan or Penguin Random House, there is a higher likelihood that you they pay for the rights to your title and you step aside and they will do the recording with an engineer doing all the production, the narrator just narrating, and then there's a likelihood they'll have a director with the narrator telling them how to do the read and listening to it and all of that. And because that process is tightly bound together and on a deadline and closely managed, you're not likely to hear anything along the way or get much of an idea until it's a finished product, because those companies will typically do all of their checks at the very end. They'll do their pickups, their checks for mistakes, after everything's been recorded, and then go back through, sweep it all, and they're not going to hand you something that hasn't been through their quality control. The same is also kind of true of indie publishers because, for the most part, they may be less likely to have a director, but they are also bound by time constraints, and only so many people able to work on so many projects at a time. So they too would be paying for the rights or having some other agreement with you and then doing the recording. And sometimes the narrator's actually doing some of the production. But that's also a case where you're probably not going to hear anything along the way until it's in the can and ready to go off to market.
Hmm.
So the third piece of that, of course, is ACX, which we've talked about before, where as the author, you're more in control of the project because you're putting it out there, but you're also listening to all the auditions and having to make that decision. And then you are still having to let go and let the narrator do their thing. Even though you have a more close relationship with them, it's still kind of a process that, for the most part, ends up being the narrator does the performance and you get the finished product.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think one of the things to keep in mind also is authors, if you have a narrator that you've already chosen, you want to work with, and maybe not having necessarily held auditions, but there's a narrator out there that that you like, and you've reached out to them, and they said yes. Um, then or if it's a narrator you've worked with before, or maybe you were holding auditions on ACX and you chose a narrator, but then you decided you wanted to go in a different direction, and do a indie publisher of a separate and outside source publisher of or recorder engineer of the book, um, or go to the majors if the majors are set up to work with you. All that said, if you've got a narrator that you want, you can bring that narrator to the producers and say, hey, this is somebody I'd really like. And it's their call whether they want to reach out to the producer and say, hey, this person wants to work with you, and would you read a sample for us just so we can make sure? Or, perhaps they just say, yeah, sure, go ahead. Or they say, no, that person's not available, or that person isn't a fit. But you have a little bit more control in that situation if you select your narrator. So that's another thing that I would offer.
That's a really good point, Matt. Yeah, because when that happens, if we get contacted by the rights holder, the publisher, we have to audition just like everybody else. So even if we're like your favorite pick, just understand that ultimately the decision will rest with the rights holder, who in this case will be the publisher.
Mhm.
So we still have to audition, but it certainly can't hurt to do that.
Right, of course. Well, thank you, Trenton. And I am Matt Haynes,
And I'm Trenton Bennett.
and as your narrators and guides through the world of audiobook production, I hope that our voices in your ears meet again real soon.